Hello, and welcome to the Wandering Creatives Podcast. I'm your host, Allie, and joining me today is Anjali of Sovereign Treasures.
Hi, Allie. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being on the podcast. I am so very excited to have you on and to learn more about who you are and what Sovereign Treasures is. And most importantly, I'm really excited to kind of discuss how you've incorporated your culture into your art, because it's stunning what you do.
Thank you.
So you're the founder of Sovereign Treasures, which includes hand-painted glassware for your home. And like I said, it's simply incredible what you do. I've been gushing about it since we started talking and pre-recording, because it just blows my mind. It's so beautiful.
It's colorful.
It is colorful and
very colorful. Yes, I enjoy that.
And that's something, well, I think I have it on here to talk about later, but you do all of your glass coloring yourself. Like your glass starts clear and then you work it into these beautiful, bright, wonderful colors.
So I usually prefer to work with clear glass because then I can color it to my, whatever my mood or my fancy is. And then I do the embellishment. Sometimes, however, I will work with colored glass. So like, especially if I find cobalt blue glass or red colored glass. So that's very interesting. I will work with that. But I find that a little restrictive because there's not much more I can do beyond embellishing it. Whereas clear glass gives me a much more wider palette, so to speak.
So I'm like, we could just dive right into all this, but before we do, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yes, so essentially, I'm an untrained artist. My background is in hospitality, and for many years, I worked in the hospitality and service sector. And then I sort of branched out more into admin and PR. But I've always enjoyed some form of art. So whether it was embroidery or crochet, I just did it as a hobby. And even the glass painting, for that matter, it started off as a hobby. So I grew up in India and I moved to London with my husband after we got married. He's a chef, so he was posted in London at that time. And I moved there and my kids were born there. So as I said, I am from hospitality. I was working as a restaurant manager. And after my daughter was born, I decided to step back and spend a little time with my child. And then my son was born 3 years later. Around that time, I was sort of looking for something to do. So one of the things I did was learn computers because, at the time when I did my education, there were no computers. So learning a new skill. And then one day I heard that a hobbycraft had opened close to my house. So the hobbycraft over there is like Michael's in the US. So I went to visit the hobbycraft with the kids, and I've always been fond of color. So I came across these glass paints and I started off by just buying a couple of jars of paint and a couple of outliners. And initially, I would just paint things to be given as gifts. I convinced my family to have a lot of jams and jellies because I wanted the empty bottles to paint. But slowly, I sort of got better at it, trained myself, read books, and taught myself the basics. And around that time, 3 or 4 friends had bought new houses. I was thinking of gifts and I didn't want to give the same old, tea set or some jug or some vase. So I decided to paint something and give them. And everybody appreciated it. So I think that was sort of a boost to my confidence. I think it was my daughter's 8th birthday. And in the UK, we had a system of giving return gifts. I don't know if it is done over here, especially now, but we did at that time. And instead of buying some, shop-bought item and given as a gift, I bought mugs and I painted each child's name on the mug and fired them and put some chocolates, whatever, and gave it to them. And every single mother rang me next day and said, thank you for such a lovely and thoughtful gift. And now we don't have to convince our kids to have their milk because they're, happy to have it in their mug. And then one of the moms called a few days later and said, would you mind making one for my husband? Because he insists on having his coffee in my daughter's mug, and father and daughter fight every morning, and it's his birthday. So would you make one for him? I had no idea of pricing, no clue how to sell it. So anyway, I made it for her and charged her whatever I thought was, fair price. And that sort of got me into the idea that I could, make some money from my hobby. That's how I started.
What was it about glass that kind of caught your eye? Because I find it really interesting that was what...
Yes. So I think I've always been very fond of stained glass. But the kids were very young, and you can't work with glass when, with stained glass. The cutting and all is difficult when you have young kids. So the glass paints was sort of like halfway medium for me, because I was getting the effect of stained glass without doing the cutting and the soldering, and it was safer. I think it started off like that. And then when I started doing it, then I sort of branched out into ceramic paints also. So stained glass paints are more decorative. You cannot wash them. Ceramic paints require firing, and that's what makes them washable. So it was such a gradual process that I cannot even begin to tell you where one stopped and the other began.
I find like the median, I guess, of glass so interesting, because I personally do not know a lot of like makers that do what you do, like this beautiful hand painted glasswares. I just find it so interesting that that's kind of where you went, and that you're self-taught. Like it's really amazing.
Well, and again, it was a very gradual process over the years. So I cannot begin to tell you at this point I started this, or so it was. I started with glass paints, and I did a lot of Ganesha painting. So Ganesha is the elephant god, and I've always been very fascinated with the form of Ganesha. And I used to do a lot of Ganesha paintings, and then the transitioning into ceramic paint. So that, I suppose, began with my daughter's 8th birthday gifts, and then sort of went on from there. And somewhere along the line, I started incorporating the henna patterns. It didn't start off like that. And a very gradual process. Couldn't tell you how it started. But one of my trips to India, because I am originally from India, as I told you, I had gone home and I did a couple of sessions of henna application, but I never ever did henna painting on anybody's hands. But as I was finding myself, at some point I said, let's do the henna patterns on glass. And before that, I had been experimenting with, the art inspired by Renee McIntosh or Clarice Cliff. In 2007, I moved to the US. And I remember going to the National Gallery of Art in DC. And I walked in, and there was this huge exhibition of Mark Rothko. And I was in love. All those colors and, my fascination with colors. So I suppose everything that I saw in some manner influenced my work. And I would go through a phase where I was doing something which was inspired by Rothko, but adding my own touch to it. And at one point, I guess it was like, why not incorporate the Eastern concept into the Western mold? And I guess that's how this art came about.
The henna art. Yeah. Because it's again, I know I'm repeating myself, but it is stunning. The work that you do, incorporating the freehand henna inspired artwork onto the glass, it really just creates beautiful designs.
Yes, it does.
I'm truly amazed, because also you have to have a super steady hand. Like it's
yes, and I've got better with age. I have got better. When I look back at my first sort of art, I'm like, oh, what was I thinking? But then it's something that you keep on doing, and you more ideas sort of come into your mind. And again, when I start with a piece, I never know how it's going to evolve. It's like a blank canvas. I'll put the base colors and then it's like, okay. And somewhere I just allow my instinct to take over. So, and that's why I always say no two pieces are alike. They may be similar, but I cannot do the same thing. There will always be a little, call it a sleight of hand, so to speak, and it will turn out to be a bit different.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, that's so interesting to me because I am very much a planner, even when it comes to kind of my creativity. I'm like, okay, I'm going to sit down and this is just sticker I'm going to make, and this is what is going to be in it. And I'll like sketch it out and I'll think about colors and all of that. And so I am just fascinated by people who really, I mean, you just kind of sit in it and let the creativity just flow and it comes out how it comes out. And that is really, truly amazing to me.
And sometimes I will hit, I call it like my dry spell, and I'm halfway through a vase or a bowl and my ideas just dry up. So it's dried up for that piece, but not for the other. So I'm usually working on 4 or 5 things at the same time. So I've learned not to fret about it too much. I just leave it. And sometimes I may go back to it after a month and then I'll finish it off in like half a day.
Yeah.
But I just have to allow myself to do it instinctively. That's what works for me.
Did you find that when you started to, like, was there ever a moment where you faced any kind of like challenges incorporating the Eastern concept into the Western medium, like you said, like kind of incorporating the henna into your glassware? Like, did you ever, like, what were some of the challenges you faced, if any?
Actually, none. So there are a few glass artists or glass painters, as I would say, but not many do the sort of work I do. There are a few, I've seen them. And I think there's one person in your neck of the woods too. She does mason jars. But I think most people have been very, very receptive to my glass. And I'm humbled by people love it because it's colorful. And I remember someone once calling them jelly bean colors. And it's true because it's so bright and people do get attracted to it. So I'm very pleased and, as I said, quite delighted that it's got the reception it does.
Yeah, the colors, they remind me a lot of like sea glass.
Yes.
And can you walk us through a little bit of the process that goes into the coloring of the clear glass?
Sure. Yeah, it's quite a long drawn out process, and it's a rather unforgiving process. And I say that because, I start with clear glass and then I sponge the paint onto it because I feel I'm more happy with the end result. Let's just put it like that. If I was to dip it into the paint, there would be drip marks. If I painted with a brush, there'd be brush strokes. And I like the complete sort of all round, all over color. But what happens is, I have to do it in one continuous motion. So if the phone rings or somebody's at the door, I will not stop, because if I stop, then there'll be a line between the two separate, phases of paint.
Yeah.
So I have to do it all in one session. And then once it dries, give it a few hours to dry, sometimes like a day. And then I start the embellishment. And as I said, it's a very unforgiving medium. So when I'm painting, and if I make a mistake and I sort of wipe it off, it will take off the base color.
Oh, really?
And then if I touch it up, then you will just see it as a separate dot. And my own eye will gravitate towards it. So then I have to wash it and start all over again. So what I do is I work on 4 or 5 things at the same time. And because you have to hold the glass. So I don't want to smudge the paint. So once the base coat is done, and when I'm doing the embellishment, I work a little bit on one piece, then I let it dry, then start work on another piece, revisit it when it's dried. So it's a continuous process. And then once the whole thing is done, then I allow it to dry for 24 hours. Then it's fired. Then give it another 24 hours for it to sort of cool down, and then it is packed. So and anything can go wrong in any of these stages.
Yeah.
And there have been times when I'm tired and my eyes are hurting because it is very fine work. And I continue to work on it. And then at the very last minute, I smudge it.
Oh, no.
And oh, yeah, I have had that happen. And then it's like I've finished 95% of it. And I don't like shoddy work. So it's like wash it and start all over again.
Oh,
so
no.
I've learned, if I'm tired, walk away.
Yeah.
Just walk away and come back to it. So it is a long process, but that sense of achievement when you see something and it looks nice, and especially when somebody sees my glass and says, "Oh, this is lovely," that sense of achievement is fantastic.
That it's like yes. I don't even know how to describe it. It's just like being filled with.
Yes, the artist craves that acceptance and adulation, the praise. Yes. The business side is different.
Oh my God!
That's different, but the artist likes it when people appreciate your stuff. Yeah,
and something we have talked about quite a bit in other episodes of the podcast is that as creators, we often have like a sense of imposter syndrome and like kind of lack a little bit of kind of confidence in sharing and putting our stuff out. Did you ever like experience that?
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. Because the day I feel I think that I know everything, I may as well just finish it off. Because overconfidence is worse. It's always best to have that little bit of underconfidence. And I've been extremely lucky. I came to this country in 2007, so I haven't been here very long, but I met some wonderful friends along the way, and they literally hit me on the head and said, "No, you're good. You need to go and display your stuff there, and you need to consign your stuff somewhere." So I have been very lucky. And, as I was telling you earlier, I signed my work, and I didn't used to do it earlier, but then I had friends who'd say, "No, sign your work because that sets it apart from somebody else, like a shop bought stuff." So I started signing my work, and then I got the feedback, "You need to put the year," because there were people who were buying my glass for, year after year. So they said, "We want to see the progression." So it's been a process of evolution.
Yeah, I have I guess a philosophical question. Maybe, but like, what do you think it is about being a maker that, or creative, I guess, that kind of makes us that way? Because it seems like the more creatives and makers I speak to, most of us kind of have that am I good enough? Will, someone enjoy what I'm putting out there?
I think all artists have it. So whether it is creators or whether it is actors, we all have that natural instinct of being acknowledged, appreciated. I think what we have to sort of be wary of is, not to let the appreciation go to your head, and still remain grounded. Because the day you feel you know it all, you've arrived, you're done.
Yeah.
There is no scope to grow. So it's always sort of that hunger in you will keep you striving. And like, what else can I do to hone my craft? So I think that is very important. That is very important.
Got to keep growing.
Yeah, absolutely.
This episode of the Wandering Creatives podcast is sponsored by Coots Creations, branding and marketing for creatives by creatives. Coots Creations serves small businesses, entrepreneurs, and creatives throughout the country with branding, marketing, and social media management. We accomplish this by creating unique graphics, a cohesive visual brand, and content that tells your brand's story and builds trust with your customers. Visit cootscreations.com and book your free consultation today.
I would love to hear kind of some of your favorite like moments that you've had as a maker.
Yeah, I've been doing this for almost 15 years, I think. And there have been some wonderful moments. As I said, when somebody is, appreciative of your work. Business one side, but when you get that connect with your customer, it's phenomenal. So remember I said that I started off by doing a lot of Ganesha paintings. And if you go back in my earlier work, you will see the elephant god. And I did one on a mirror, which was a little difficult to do because it's reflective. But when I gave it to this lady, she just fell in love with it. She called me back about a week later and said, I feel so peaceful when I see this painting. So that really makes you feel wonderful. And I remember I was at a show, I think it was somewhere in Silver Spring, Maryland. And this lady came to my booth and we just got talking, and she's looking at my glass, and then she bought something I still remember it was a purple color. And she said to me, I think she'd lost her cousin sister recently to cancer. And her favorite color was purple. And she said, I'm buying this in remembrance. And it was so touching. And, she started crying. And I also got a little emotional. Sometimes something touches a nerve in people. And it's these one-to-one interactions which really make you feel, okay, you're doing something worthwhile. And of course, as I said, what really set me on the path was that mother who called me and said, please make a mug for my husband. Yeah. So these instances, they give you a warm feeling, that what you're doing matters. It makes a difference. And as I told you, the artist wants that adulation, not even adulation, the acknowledgement. Mm-hmm. So that is very important. That is very important.
I often say that through my work, whether it's writing, photography, artwork, whatever, I want people to experience an emotion. Yes. I want them to feel something. And I think what you kind of just talked about is what I mean when I say that. But it's hard to explain that to someone else. I'm like, I just want someone to look at my art or read one of my poems and to feel something.
Yes. And a lot of times the feedback I've got from my customers, let's put it that way, is that you can personalize a gift. So and no disrespect to places like Nordstrom and Macy's, but you go there and it's pink or blue or whatever. And if you want orange, I will do orange for you. So I cannot even tell you the number of times I've had people saying, oh, this gift is for so-and-so person because it's their college colors, it's their graduation colors, it's the bridal colors. So in that same sort of price range, you're able to personalize a gift. I was doing a craft show at the National Geographic head office in DC, and this lady was walking past and she saw my work and stopped and said, oh, she says, I'm going for this wedding and the bride's registry is Fiesta crockery. And she bought a few bowls, one of each color, and she said that would go right there with Fiesta colors. So those sort of things, I think, are just so wonderful. And I've made some wonderful friends in my journey. Somebody bought a small gift at one show, gave it to a colleague for Christmas, and then that lady called me and said, what a wonderful gift. I enjoy it. I think it was a poster or something. And she said, I keep it under my mug in the office. And then she became a good friend. So I cannot even begin to tell you how many people have come into my circle of friends through my glass.
That's amazing. That's one of the best things about being a creative, being a maker.
It is.
Especially when you do markets. Like that's that's one of my favorite things. It's like, and then again, like I said, I'm kind of an introvert, but when I'm at a market, I'm out there, I'm talking to people, I'm telling my story, I'm hearing their stories. And it's just an amazing way to connect with people.
It is wonderful. And I think most people are nice by nature.
Yes.
So, when you touch that chord, it's wonderful. And a lot of them have become good friends over the years. And so I'll tell you a not funny instance, but a lovely incident. I used to do the 17th Street Festival in DC, and I've been doing it for many years, barring the past 2 years, of course. And I had this couple who used to come, and they had a little Haley. And they would come to my booth, and then Mike would buy a gift, and Tom would buy something, and then Haley would buy something. And over the years, Haley is now, I think when I first started doing the 17th Street Festival, she was about 7-8 years old, and now she's a young lady. And many years, they would forget that it was the day of the festival, but she would remind them because she wanted to come and meet a friend, that is me. And then one year, they came with their dog. And I said, oh, new dog and all. What's his name? So they said, Comet, Haley's Comet. And they've become such good friends. So, I meet them once a year, but I can always bank on them to be there at the market. And if they've forgotten, Haley will remind them. So it's that connect you have with people. It's just so wonderful. They have seen, my son used to accompany me. And now, of course, he's working, but they've seen him grow up into a young man. I have seen Haley grow up from a little toddler. So it's so wonderful that my craft brought us together.
Yeah, I am smiling from ear to ear. Like my cheeks hurt from how hard I'm smiling because I like stories like that. Just like it gives me like goosebumps.
It does.
It's truly amazing the connections that you can make through.
True. And I'm sure you have many such stories too, because we meet all these wonderful people. And I consider myself fortunate that I have all these people in my life because of my craft.
Thank you for sharing those stories. Before we start wrapping up, when we were speaking earlier, mentioned that you are part of the North Virginia Handcrafters Guild.
Yes, I am.
Could you just share just a little bit of information about what the Handcrafters Guild is?
So the guild is, a body which brings all the crafters together. And there are shows which are organized by the guild, so we can promote our craft through the guild. Not only that, a portion of the money we gather from the booth fees, we run a couple of scholarships to help students in the arts. So there's a lot of that's our way of giving back to the community, and it's a body of like-minded people who come together in a common pursuit of the arts. And the way I look at it, I have met such wonderful crafters there. It absolutely keeps me from getting a swollen head. Because whatever I do, there are people who do so much better, their craft so much better. And I think we all grow as individuals and as artists when you are, like-minded sort of artists and creators. We, of course, we've not been able to have any in-person meetings. We meet once a month, and we usually try, in addition to other sort of business stuff, we try to have one, like a section of cumulative interest. So we may have a few artists talking about our work. So we break up in groups, and then we share how we do our craft. So it's amazing because sometimes when we have the shows, we don't get an opportunity to go and see other artists, but each person has their story and how they do their stuff. I think it's a process of learning, and I learn so much from them. We also provide help to the artists. We bring in people who will talk to us about, say, about accountancy or tax, how to do your taxes. So helping each other and helping the community. So it's a wonderful organization. Yes, I've been a member for, I think, 3 years now. And it's a fantastic place.
Having resources for creatives and makers that touch on those things is so helpful. It is very, very helpful. And as I said, when you're with, nobody can exist in a vacuum. So when you are with like-minded people, even if it is information about shows, so many of us do shows outside of the guild. The guild has a few shows a year, but a lot of us do the shows outside the guild. So you learn from each other. Hey, there's a show in so-and-so place. And, and again,
not every show is suitable for everyone, because it's like, what sort of a clientele is this? But you get the opportunity, you get the information. So I think it's a wonderful organization to join.
And just being surrounded by like other creative people, I feel like just makes you feel so much more creative
It's your
yourself
own,
and like
it's
inspires
your
you.
own tribe, so to speak.
Yeah. Love that so much. I am, it sounds like an amazing organization. So before we like fully wrap up, do you have any last words of advice for makers out there?
What I would tell people is sometimes the going is tough, especially in today's climate, for want of a better word. Be true to your craft. Just do the best you can. Do not sell yourself short. Believe in yourself. Find like-minded people who will push you up rather than pull you down, and just give it your best shot.
Love that. Be true to your craft. That is
most important. No shortcut.
So important.
Yeah.
Amazing, wonderful words of advice. Is there anything that you're currently working on that you'd like to share with listeners? Like, are you doing any like virtual shows or anything?
So I started my website last year during the pandemic. And this was when the shows were not happening, I just decided to continue doing my craft and experiment with a few new things. So my latest have been my porcelain ornaments. This is something I've been wanting to do for some time, but didn't quite know what exactly where I was going with that. And then I found these porcelain rounds, and I decided to stay true to what I do, my henna patterns. And I've done a couple of shows where I've introduced them, and they've had a very good feedback. So I'm quite excited, and I'm looking to do variations in that.
They're beautiful, as everything you do is. I mean, honestly, I sound like I'm not trying to blow smoke up your butt or anything, but like your work is truly just stunning. And these ornaments are so cute.
I'm quite happy with
so
the way I'm quite happy with the way they've turned out.
Yeah, you've got a dark blue one, I think it is.
Blue always translates very well.
Blue and gold, just stunning.
And then the Swarovski crystals just give it that little edge.
A little pizzazz. Yeah, no, these are
the bling, yes.
Just beautiful. And so actually with the ornaments, because you do the glass dye and everything, do you use that same type of method on your ornaments to get the colors?
I do. Yeah. So I do fire them, and only because, the paints I use, I'm used to it, and I do want them to be long lasting. Mm. So I do fire them, and after they're fired, then I put the crystals on them.
Yeah, so stunning. I mean, really, your work is chef's kiss. It's truly, truly beautiful. And again, I'm just like flabbergasted that you do this all by hand. So your website is sovereigntreasure.square.site. Where else can folks find you online?
You can find me on Instagram, which is again Sovereign Treasures, and then my Facebook page, Sovereign Treasures. My contact details are on all of them. You can always contact me directly via email. And I ship all over the US. Mm-hmm. I use priority mail, so that can be arranged too. Mm-hmm. And I also do a lot of custom work, which I mention on all my sites. So if there is something in a particular color to suit a particular occasion or whatever, I'm quite happy to work with my customers on that.
I can't thank you enough, Anjali, for being on the podcast today and sharing your stories. And it's just been absolutely wonderful getting to learn more about you.
My pleasure, Allie. Thank you for having me. It's nice to get to talk about something which brings you happiness and brings other people happiness. That is very important.
And I really just want to thank you for sharing your stories. Like, I've really loved hearing what your experience has been as a maker and that joy that you've been able to bring others. Like it fills me with kind of that same sense of just like, I'm like overly happy for you that you've been able to give those people that experience.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Does that make sense?
It does. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh my gosh. And listeners, you can follow Sovereign Treasures and Anjali on Instagram @Sovereign Treasures and on Facebook, Sovereign Treasures. And As she mentioned, she's got her website up and running. I highly recommend everyone check it out and just appreciate the talent and quality that goes into her artwork, because it is absolutely stunning. And I will include all of her information in the episode description, so it'll be easy for you to find. And I just can't thank you enough.
My pleasure. It's been wonderful talking to you, and I hope to let's keep in touch.
Oh, 100%. Yes. I want to thank you for tuning in today, and be sure to like, rate, and review the podcast. If you have questions, comments, thoughts, whatever, for me or for my guests, you can text or call us on our hotline at 252-419-6004, and we will answer your questions on a future episode of the podcast. You can also follow us on Instagram at wandering_creative_. And I would encourage you to check out our website at cutescreations.com. With that, we'll sign off, and I encourage you all to tap into that creativity and have a wonderful week. And we will see you next week. Bye.
This has been a Coots Creations production. Follow the show on Instagram at wandering_creative_ and on Twitter at wandering_pod. For more information, go to cootscreations.com. Like, rate, review, and subscribe. To sponsor the Wandering Creatives podcast, visit www.cootscreations.com/podcast-sponsorship-opportunities. You can also click the link in the episode description below. To be a guest or a featured maker on the podcast, click the link in our Instagram bio or contact us at cootscreationsllc@gmail.com.